the tool, what it can do. And just to say, this session is being recorded, so if you don't want to be seen or heard on it, please let us know or leave or something, whatever people do when they're not wear a mask of somebody else. I don't know. And so now over to you, Joe, and thanks so much for joining us with this.
Yeah, no, not at all. Thanks for having me. So, hi everyone. My name's Joe Ash. I'm a Net Zero associate working in the local Net Zero team at UK Power Networks DSO, and I'm joined by Matt. If you want to just quickly introduce yourself as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Matt Bailey. I'm a product manager working with the local Net Zero team at UK Power Networks, and I specifically help look after some of the digital tools that we provide to help local authorities with their decarbonisation planning.
Yep. So this is a kind of session to go through the LAEP Plus tool to show you how it works, show you the kind of like powerful features and functionality that it has. But first, because I'm aware there's quite a wide range of people on the call, we've got community energy groups, got some local authorities. Just to make sure that we're all on the same page, I thought I'd spend a couple of minutes just kind of setting the scene, going through what my team does and a brief overview of the kind of the LAEP Plus tool, but some of the other tools and services that we have available as well. So without further ado, so we are UK Power Networks. We are the electricity network operator for the kind of southeast of England. I think I've got a map later on, but broadly speaking, if you draw a line from kind of Norfolk to Cambridge to London to Brighton, everything to east of that line is us. But so you might be familiar with us in terms of our more traditional role of maintaining the networking and making new connections. But what you might not be aware of is that in April 2023, so about 2 years ago, in fact, we just had our 2-year birthday not that long ago, the company split, and there is now the DNO, the distribution network operator, as well as the DSO, the distribution system operator. We're still the same company, we still work together, but the core difference is that the DNO is the more traditional role of reliability of the network and connections. So if the lights go out, it's them who'll be fixing it. If you need to connect a charge point, it's them who'll be digging the hole in the road and making the connection. Whereas the DSO, what you can think of us being in charge of is capacity. So looking at that long-term view, coming back to quite a few of the things that Kirsty mentioned, joined up planning, looking for a long-term pathway or long-term requirements within an area to make sure that we are upgrading the network in the most efficient way possible. So I think it's important just to kind of set the scene like that. Broadly speaking, the DNO connections and reliability, the DSO capacity and flexibility on the network. And yeah, this is our license area here. So you can see that we cover a very large area, kind of Norfolk, Norfolk, Essex, most of London, and then most of the southeast. And we actually have, if you're not too sure whether or not we serve your local authority, we actually serve 133 local authorities, and you can access them. I'll share these slides later, but you can find out which local authorities we serve on that hyperlink there, which is just a list of all the 133. The reason that I mention local authorities is because us as the local Net Zero team, our kind of key role is to support local authorities and their supporting organisations. So we support community energy groups, we support the consultancies that work with local authorities, but the primary people that's specifically within the LAEP Plus tool is designed for local authorities. We have many users that are not local authorities, we have a lot of community energy groups that are using it, but you need to get permission from that local authority to be invited into the tool. And this is just for a kind of governance overview. We need to have a kind of a single point of accountability, especially if you think about the ability to upload data. There might be personal data and things like that that get uploaded. So the broad message is that the tool is really powerful. It can support a lot of different use cases, but for a non-local authority user, you need to get permission from that local authority. So as I mentioned, we are here to support kind of like local decarbonisation, and we do so really with kind of 3 main pillars: people, data and digital, and network planning. So the people, that's us, that's the local Net Zero team. We work with local authorities and community energy groups. We engage a lot, trying to understand what support you guys need, and then develop tools and services to support those needs. A good example of this is the LAEP Plus tool itself. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we were engaging with local authorities, and they said that there's a lot of data out there, but actually we don't always have the internal resource to be able to spatially map this data, to perform spatial analysis on this data, to layer it with other sorts of data sets. It'd be useful if there was some kind of mapping tool which also had network data on. So that was a need that we heard, and then we responded by developing the LAEP Plus tool, and we continue to develop it and enhance it based on feedback. So yeah, we create the LAEP Plus tool, and I'll actually show you a couple of the other things that we've been working on, just so you've got that kind of full picture of the different tools and services available. But then, of course, the other element of this is all around making sure that we have the insights that we need to plan the growth of the network in an efficient and cost-effective way. So to do that, we've been doing a lot of work on the more operational side of the business, and we've actually developed a framework whereby local authority data, so that might be that which might be contained in a local area energy plan, let's say, can actually go through and update the forecast which we use to determine network investment directly. So last year we did this for the first time, and we took in data covering 32 of the 133. So what's that, about a quarter, a fifth, something like that. We took in data covering 32 local authorities and went into informing the forecasts, the distribution future energy scenarios, which are the forecasts that we use to underpin a lot of our network investment activities. So people, data and digital, network planning, it's all different kind of three, I was about to say three arms, three pillars of the local net zero team and the work we do to kind of support local decarbonisation. So talking about the LEAP Plus tool, but we've got a couple of other things that have been available. And I think the main, if you take one thing away from this, is come and visit our website, yourlocalnetzerohub.co.uk. That has a list of all the different tools and services available. It has an overview of the types of things that we work on, and it allows you actually to book a meeting with our team directly through the kind of contact us option at the top. But just quickly before we get right into the LEAP Plus tool, we've also been working on a couple of other initiatives. One being Charge Point Navigator, looking to support local authorities roll out charge points after they receive kind of like local electric vehicle infrastructure funding. And we've also got our local area energy planning open data page, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it has over 170 data sets, which are all openly available. It's got a mix of our own internal data sets as well as third-party data sets from trusted sources like the Office of National Statistics or the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. And we actually recently just redesigned it and kind of revamped it towards the beginning of this year. So yeah, a lot of tools and services available, a lot of work that we like to get involved with. Visit our website and you can find out a lot more. But onto the meat of the bones, what we're actually here to talk about, and that is the LEAP Plus planning tool. So it's designed to support local authorities and their partner organisations with decarbonisation planning. And it's got a lot of different functionality, and you'll see a lot of that in the demos that we do today. But what you can do is you can visualize data incredibly easy. We've got data from a range of sources, including some incredibly granular bespoke data sets which go right down to house level, so you can see whether or not this house may or may not be suitable for a domestic heat pump, for example. It's also got the ability for you to upload your own data, so you might want to take into account you might want to take into account residents' requests, for example, as well as some of the preloaded data sets. You can also do project planning, so you can place the actual low carbon technologies on the map itself. So you can say, not only am I visualizing all the data that I need to see to get the baseline of what my area looks like right now, but I can start to plan and place technologies on the network as well. So what happens if all of this row of houses gets rooftop PV, for example? You can then also run analysis on those projects. You can see, okay, I've got a row of houses with rooftop PV. What's the carbon savings? What's that likely to cost me, both from a labour and capital point of view, as well as some budget estimates as well for the connection cost, that is. You can also do scenario planning, so not just specific houses, specific heat pumps, but say, what might a decarbonisation scenario look like to get me to net zero by 2050 with, let's say, an interim target of 50% of houses with heat pumps by 2030. You can put those parameters in, set the different parameters that you want the scenario to be developed under, and then it just turns the handle and comes up with a kind of decarbonisation trajectory broken down by different technology segments. It's also got a lot of powerful features around stakeholder engagement, so you can add lists of stakeholders to it. You can tick them off against specific organizations or groups that you want to engage with. You can see who you've got that list of. You can also create consultations. You can attach projects to a consultation, so you can say, what do you think of this specific project, and let people have a play around with that. You can attach questionnaires as well, and you can also do something called a data story, which is my personal kind of highlight of the tool. I think it's fantastic. It's kind of like an interactive PowerPoint where you can have some text on one side but interactive elements on the other side. So that could be a map, it could be a project, something that they can play around with and zoom in, zoom out and explore. And one of the other final things is that it allows you to easily share information with UK Power networks. It's important to stress that each instance of the tools, each local authority instance, is completely private. We don't see what's going on in there unless you share it with us. We see kind of top level information, so you might say, okay, Essex has created a project, but we can't see what that project is unless Essex choose to share it with us. And this is just to give you that privacy and that space to play around with different options before you feel like you want to get us involved. I might skip over this slide. This kind of repeats what I was saying, but we've got the data explorer showing you the visualizing the map, data stories, building portfolios. It's a new feature which probably cover in the demo, but it's a way of selecting buildings on a much more rules-based and powerful way. Yeah, consultations and scenarios are some of the other features that we've got in there, and it's a really good feature that allows you to do a lot of stakeholder engagement and do long-term decarbonisation planning. With that, I will quickly just switch over to my other screen. Bear with me, and do a quick overview of the tool, and at which point I will hand over to Matt and we'll go through some of the specific use cases that I think some people were sending through ahead of the session. So thank you everyone for sending those through. Bear with me 2 seconds. Can I get some nods or some hands up? Is everyone able to see that? Excellent. So this is the LAEP Plus tool. When you first log in, this is what you see. Straight away, I'll just talk you through kind of what's on the screen and how to navigate it. So we've got our kind of navigation panel, I suppose you might call it, on the left-hand side, and this just calls out all the specific features and functionality that will contain within the tool. So we've got the map, which has the ability, which shows you the data sets. It allows you to view our forecasts that we're currently basing our network investment strategy around, and allows you to plan a project. We've got a bunch of resources, so guidance, use cases, upcoming events that we're doing, as well as some research on different funding sources that might be available. I'll show you these use cases actually, because it's quite a useful place to start off with for someone who might be a new user. So it has a bunch of different articles saying, I'm new here and I want to understand more around, rooftop PV generation. Excuse me, sorry. It'll come up with a short description of what PV is, why it might be useful, what things you might need to consider, and then automatically generate, so that I'm logged into the Malden instance at the moment, it will automatically generate some statistics based on that technology. So I can see that in Malden, for example, it estimates around 24,000 properties would be suitable for rooftop PV, with just under 6,000 being unsuitable. It will also give you a steer in terms of some of the data sets. So it will say that we have these data sets which could be useful for planning a rooftop PV scenario. But these are some of the rooftop PV. These are some of the data sets which you might have internally, which could also be useful. So that's the guidance. This section here just kind of talks a bit around the background of how we do network planning, some of the work we've been doing to try and get more local insights contained into our network plans. So it has some links to how you can share more detailed information on your long-term scenarios. It also has some links to our DFARS, explaining how the DFARS works and how it informs our own network investment. The dashboard allows you to create kind of summary stats. So you might want to say, okay, how many properties are suitable for rooftop PV, index that against EPC rating, something like that. Planning progress, this one just links it links your overall targets with the number of projects that you've shared with us. It doesn't look like Malden have shared any projects with us yet, so that's why this is blank at the moment. But this is really, once it's a bit more embedded within a specific local authority, I can't show you that local authority, unfortunately, because it's their projects they've shared with us in confidence. But once you start showing more and more projects, you can see how this the number of projects shared kind of meets that overall trajectory there. The progress tracker does something quite similar. The manage access, this just was where you can control who comes in, who comes out of your instance. So you can have different sorts of permission types. If you're working with a consultancy for a fixed period, let's say, you can invite them in and say you've only got access for 30 days or 2 months or however long the project is running for. And then we've got the stakeholder engagement section, and this is a really cool section. Like I mentioned, it allows you to add in individual stakeholders. You can tick them off against the different sorts of stakeholders that they are, and then you can run a consultation. So I won't show you the whole thing, but you can add in all the information. You can attach items like a questionnaire or a data story or a scenario. You can create your questionnaire here, set the duration, and add in the specific stakeholders. So that's a very whistle-stop tour around the kind of the overall navigation of the tool. I'll now show you some of the data sets and how it works really. So you click on the map and it comes up with the local authority boundaries. Like I said, in this case, it's Malden. And straight away, you'll see that there's a bunch of different folders of different data sets here. Like I mentioned, there are some publicly available data sets, such as some of the socio-demographic data. I think this is from either the census or from potentially the ONS. So we've got things like indices of multiple deprivation. Any data set, you can just click on this little download icon. It'll download, give it a second, and then be visualized there. If you want to know more about any of the data sets, there's this little information icon here. You can click on that and it loads up all the metadata. So I can see it was actually the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, not the Office of National Statistics, my mistake. It will come up with the metadata in this table here, and it will come up with a brief description of what the data set is down here. And you can also view that up here as well. There's a legend for any data set that you load up, so you can see, okay, it's showing me this, but what do those colors actually mean? Oh yeah, and then you can also do a lot of layering and filtering, but I'll show you that in a second, just after I've maybe loaded up some of the other data sets. So like I said, we've got some third-party data sets, or the publicly available data sets rather, on things like socio-demographic information. We've also got a lot of our own data sets here as well. So for example, under utility networks here, I can see that we have our, where should I start? I'll probably start with the primary substations. I can see that it will load up the primary substation feeding areas here. And I can see that feeding Malden, there are, what's this, maybe 8 or 9 primary substation areas, most of them with at least 5% headroom, one between 5% headroom and 5% overloaded. So I can see that the Tiptree substation here is just slightly overloaded at the moment. So there's likely being some reinforcement or some flexibility work going on there. It has all of our network data actually from primary all the way down to cable level. So I'll just show you that because I understand that's going to be quite an interesting point of conversation later on, maybe in the Q&A. So maybe just a little bit of background in terms of how the network works and why you might be thinking why it's a very difficult question to ask, how much capacity is there? And the answer to that is because capacity depends on what you're looking to connect. So we've got the national grid, which transport electricity all the way around the UK. They do that at kind of like extremely high voltage. You can think of them almost as like the motorways. But then the national grid meets the distribution networks like us, and they meet at what's called a grid supply point. And those are owned by National Grid, but we connect into them. And then once it goes to the distribution network, that's us. You can think of us as kind of like the A roads, B roads, and little winding roads that go to take the electricity from the national grid to people's homes and businesses. But at each point, we have a kind of like a step down in the voltage to make it safe to go into people's homes. So like I mentioned, we've got the grid supply points. They then travel around our license area, and then they get stepped down at a primary substation, which you can see here. It covers a relatively large area, but a grid supply point will cover a much larger area. So the electricity goes from the grid supply point to the primaries. The primaries then go to the secondaries, which I'll show you here. So you can see there's about 8 or so primaries that feed Malden, and there's a couple of hundred within Malden at the secondary level. So the secondary level, you can think of that as we look at more of an urban area, kind of a block or two, a couple of streets, and this is where coming out of the secondaries will be the low voltage feeders, which go into people's homes and businesses, which you can see then here with our network topology data set here. There we go. So these are all of our underground cables. They'll mostly appear in urban areas. You're probably unlikely to see them. Actually, no, because I think it has our overhead lines as well. Ignore me. But you can click on all of our underground all of our cables here. Sorry, and it'll show you the location. Also show you the type. There is some data issues just in terms of the completeness of it. So you can see that N in use. I think that's supposed to say in use and a bunch of numbers after it. There's an ongoing vectorization program to improve the quality of our cable data, but we still think it's useful to show you guys, especially if you're doing something like connecting a electric vehicle charge point. For example, if you're doing one over here, even something as simple as having the charge point on the same side of the road as the cable can reduce the cost of connecting it by about half, because we don't have to dig up the whole road. So we still thought it'd be useful to show you the cable locations. So that's a lot of our different network data we have. We've got other things as well, but just kind of running through this, we'll get into some more of the specifics when we start doing some of those use cases. But in addition to that, we've got some renewable potential data, and this is data that comes from our software delivery partner, Advanced Infrastructure here. And this is where we have a number of data sets which go down to individual building level. So I'll show you this one here, domestic air source heat pump potential. And there we go. You can see that this is loaded up the kind of outline of all of the domestic properties within Malden here. And you can see that it's color coded green or grey, depending on whether or not that property would be suitable for a heat pump. This is just based on the physical characteristics of the property. It doesn't take into account the loading on the network at the moment. We're looking at ways we can get those two things talking to each other, but at the moment this is just showing you the kind of physical characteristics of the building. So I think it looks at EPC rating, it looks at the size of the garden, and the and the distance from neighbours to take into account noise regulations, I believe. With all these things, you can find out a lot more information on the dataset info tab. So we've got a number of these very kind of specific data sets, building level data sets. We've got air source heat pump potential, ground source heat pump potential, rooftop PV, as well as domestic insulation here. Some of the other ones that we've been working on, rather not working on, but that we've got in the tool are around solar, ground mounted solar and wind. And this might be a good one to look at in Malden. This is off the back of the IRENES project, which looks at integrating renewable technologies. And what they did is they developed a methodology to look at, I think, either 1 by 1 or 10 by 10, probably 10 by 10 meter squares, and determine how suitable that area would be for rooftop PV. It looks at things like the gradient of the land, whether it's a flood risk zone, whether there are airports or kind of areas of outstanding natural beauty, a bunch of things there to look at the suitability of an area for mounting either ground mounted solar or ground mounted wind here. So whistle stop tour there of some of our renewable potential data sets. We've got ordnance survey data loaded in, so you've got address base, so you can see the locations and characteristics of buildings within an area. You know, are they domestic? Are they schools? Are they hospitals? So on. And we've also got our flexibility zones, which can be useful if you're looking to tap into flexibility markets. It looks like in Malden there's only one area here, looking at demand turned down from our most recent, well not most recent, from the previous summer 2024 tender round. With all of the data sets, so I'll just load up the indices of multiple deprivation again. You can layer them. Actually, I'll just load up the flexibility as well. So you've got quite powerful layer control. So you can say, okay, I want the flexibility zones on top. Actually, I want to turn that off. I want to turn it on. You can do a lot of power. You can do a lot of tweaking with the way it's visualized, because we know that this can be quite useful for taking screenshots, embedding it within reports and things like that. So you can change the fill color, the stroke width, the height, the opacity, and you can export these data sets as well. Which is an important thing that I should have mentioned earlier, but I'm mentioning it now. I think all of the data sets, apart from maybe one or two, which we've had to control just for regulatory reasons, such as our network topology, just due to safety concerns. But pretty much all the other data sets you can export for your own analysis off platform if you want to have a look at it in your own Esri systems or in, I don't know, some kind of other geospatial platform. And as well as the layering, you've also got the ability to filter. And you can do filtering either through based on the characteristics of the data set, the metrics, not metrics, the variables within the data sets, or you can do it geospatially. So for example, if I am filtering indices of multiple deprivation, I want to do it income rank. It's between this and this. I only want to look at ones, I don't know, kind of in the middle, and it will show me here. Or I want to look at ones really in the green, it's here. So you can do a lot of you can filter any of the fields within any of the data sets, and you can also do a geospatial filter, which you just kind of click on the map to create a polygon, and it'll filter the data set to whatever's in that polygon. As I mentioned, you can also upload data, so something like residence requests, maybe low parking zones, maybe you've already done some analysis to come up with the outlines for specific land plots that you want to look at installing generation. You can upload that data without any issues at all. I'll briefly touch on projects, but I imagine this is something we'll go into more detail on in a bit when we start doing the use cases. But broadly speaking, the projects, like I said, it allows you to start on this data view and then actually start to place place technologies in an area. So if I just creatively call a project test and demo, anytime you start a project, you can put in the data it's meant you project it to start. You can load in any data sets you want to look at straight off the bat, and you can load in your own cost and carbon templates. So I'll show you that in a second. So you can choose, yeah, you create your project and then you're greeted with all these tiles here of different technologies that you can place. Anytime you click on one, it will automatically download the relevant data sets. So this has just done it for rooftop PV. I'm going to turn off the headroom here, and you can see it's telling me where these rooftop PV suitable properties are. I can then just go in and then click on one, and I've now placed a rooftop PV unit on that property. You can adjust the capacity. Let's say, no, you wouldn't do that, would you? And run an assessment. Anytime you run an assessment, what it does is it gives you this little summary, quite handy on the right hand side, telling me that I've placed one PV unit of 5 kilowatts on that building. It's giving me projected cost and cost saving here. Sorry, give me a projected carbon saving, and you can adjust the carbon values, let's say, to make them match your own internal reporting very easily just through there. Likewise with cost, it'll give you an estimate of the cost broken down by the material cost and the labor cost. But again, you might have something, let's say, like a Solar Together scheme. You might have an agreement with a PV provider to install it at a certain rate, and you can put in that information here. So this will be aligned with your own internal reporting. The budget range as well. This is only for large scale new connections, so things like an ultra rapid charge point, for example. But what it will do, excuse me, is it looks at historical connection quotes for similar technologies in the similar area and says this is the kind of like range of values that you can look at. So between, I don't know, I'm not even going to come up with some numbers, but it gives you an idea. We'll be talking thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands. It can give you that initial range of values. Before I hand over to Matt and we start going through some of the more detailed use cases, one final thing is that if when you get invited into the tool, when you look at it for the first time, the first thing I recommend doing is up here, access tutorials. We've got some really helpful integrated guidance which can talk you through just kind of like navigating it, understanding what's in the tool and how you can use it. It can be very, very helpful. And also we have a integrated guidance system down here. This is a mix of kind of frequently asked questions, how-to articles, and also a real person you can talk to give you support. So for example, I'm looking to understand how to upload, if I can spell, upload data. Where have I missed it? Transforming and uploading data sets. Here we go. It now gives me everything I need to know about how to upload data sets. So I'd always, if you ever have a question how to do something within the tool, I'd always recommend checking out the help icon down here. And if any of the articles aren't helpful, you can send a message. So you can say, I need help with this feature, and there is a real person. For that's Cleo. Worked with her a lot. She's fantastic. They're always really, really helpful. I use it myself. I've been doing demos and talking about the tool for almost 2 years now, but there's just so much in it. There are things that I'm missing out on. So sometimes I have to use this to just ask them, how do I do this certain thing, and they're always incredibly helpful. But with that, I think I'll hand over to Matt, and I think we had a couple of use cases we wanted to go through, or would now be maybe a good chance to do a little bit of Q&A? I'll hand over to Matt.
Yes. Should we do a quick, we could just answer the questions that have come up already, Joe, just in case you have to go.
Sure.
Okay. So I've kind of collated them. There were questions about which whether UKPN covers the whole of the UK, which obviously you don't. If you want to just explain how that goes, and also if you have an idea whether the other DSOs have a similar tool, because not everybody on this call is in the UKPN area.
Yep, no, absolutely. So yeah, despite our name being UK Power Networks, we are very much a Southeast company. We are, yeah, like I said, if you imagine a line from Norfolk to kind of Oxford down to London and then out and around Brighton. I don't know why I'm describing it. You can see it right here. This is the area that we serve. If you do a lot of work with specific local authorities and you want to know whether or not we serve that local authority, I'd recommend, and like I said, I'll share all these links later, but you can find it on our open data portal. We've got a list of the 133 local authorities that we work with. Important to mention is that even if we serve just like 1% of that local authority still has access to the the LEAP Plus tool. So you can see here that Milton Keynes is actually outside of our area, but I think we serve something like 2 streets in Milton Keynes. But Milton Keynes has full access to the LEAP Plus tool. The only difference is that we won't have as much network data on there because we don't have as much network in that area. So yeah, this is the area we cover. There are some, you can find out if the local authority we serve the local authority through that link. Alternatively, if you go to the Energy Network Association site or just type in "what's my DNO," there's a quite a handy little postcode finder there. We can just put in a postcode and it'll tell you which DNO serves that postcode. In terms of the other DNOs, yeah, I know that. So just in case not everyone knows, there are 6 organisations like us in Great Britain. So we're UK Power Networks. There are 5 others. So there is National Grid Electricity Distribution, which kind of does the Midlands, Wales, and a bit of and the Southwest. And there is Scottish and Southern, which does Scotland, half of Scotland, and also this kind of like region here from kind of Oxford down like Bath and Salisbury to Bournemouth, more or less. I can't speak for every single other DNO, but I know that several of them have got a tool that is similar, at least in principle, to the LEAP Plus tool that we use. They will be slightly different. You know, we've done a lot of work engaging with local authorities and community energy groups to try and make sure that the tool responds to the sorts of use cases that were identified. So I can't comment on just how similar all the tools are, but I do know that most of the other DNOs have invested in some sort of geospatial mapping data tool like this.
That's great, thank you. And then if you just want to have a quick look at the Q&A, actually, there aren't too many questions. Although Mike was asking, can town councils use the tool as well? I'm assuming they can if they get permission from the local authority, from the planning authority.
Yep, no, that's absolutely correct. So it's predominantly local authority first. So because we need to have like a single kind of accountable owner for each of the instances of the tool, but anyone that a local authority is working with is more than welcome to get into the tool. Just need to get permission from the local authority.
Okay, lovely. So so I was asking, is 5% headroom on a primary substation likely to last long? Like what would tip that over the edge?
Excellent question. So if we just go back and have a look, it should tell that this might be a good place to put in to do the project. So when you do a project view here, it has this slider. So you can see kind of how much capacity you might tip a primary substation from green to amber to red. So if I start here and I just go, I don't know, if I put in an additional 5, excuse me, bit hiccupy. If I put an additional 5 MVA, I can see that these 2 substations up here and these 2 substations down here go from, I think this one was amber previously. Oh, no, it goes from amber to red, green to red, or green to amber here. And that's because if I look at it, it's got a capacity of it's got a rating of 10.6 MVA, 2.8 MVA headroom. So I've added an additional 2 MVA. We're left with about 800 kilowatts, which is not a huge amount. So it's a very hard question. So you can see that in Malden, kind of, what's this? Each substation, if we're looking at, kind of like that 10 to 15 MVA would be enough to tip these substations over the edge. What's important though, and this is, I kind of think I started on this earlier, but maybe didn't get around to finishing it, is headroom depends on what you're looking to connect. So if you are looking to connect, a 7 kilowatt charger or a 3 kilowatt rooftop PV or a heat pump or something like that, wouldn't even bother looking at the primary substation stuff because it's so small in the grand scheme of things that the primary substation, it doesn't really matter. So you could be there are situations where your the primary substation is red, it's overloaded, but the secondary network's fine, so you can keep on connecting those low capacity technologies. Whereas if you're looking to connect a 50 megawatt solar farm, I wouldn't bother looking at the secondary network, because unlike, you won't be connecting to the secondary network, you'll get your own substation to connect in at a higher voltage level. So this is why it's quite tricky to talk about what's it enough for, because it really depends on what you're trying to do. What I would say is that um, the 5% headroom, like, is it enough? It depends. Yeah, it depends on what you're looking to connect. It's enough for a lot of things. It's not enough for some other things. It will last as long as it's available for. The way that the kind of connections queue works is, I might have to double check this, but I know that previously we were in a kind of first come, first serve situation. So we're regulated so that if someone says, I want to connect this technology in this area, we are obliged to give them a quote and accept them and put them into the connections queue. But then that means we can't give out that capacity to someone else. So previously we've been in situations where a customer comes to us and says, I want a 10 megawatt connection here. And we say, okay, you're approved, you have that capacity, but then they just sit on it for years and years and years, because it's kind of called like capacity hoarding. Like they'll get quotes for amounts of capacity in different areas and just sit on it in case or until they need it. And that means that you have people after them in the queue who are ready to connect right here, right now. They've got, they're waiting, they've got the paperwork, they've got some spades, they're ready to dig, but we're not allowed to give them that capacity because it's already been reserved for someone ahead of them in the queue. That is going to be changing either already or soon. It's moving away from a first come, first serve and more towards a first ready, first serve. So the queue will be kind of, we've done a lot of work working with National Grid to try and cut down that queue in area for actors that have just been sitting on capacity for years and years without kind of progressing it at all. But we're looking to, or the regulator rather, is looking to change the regulations so it's more of a first ready, first serve. So hopefully that will unlock a lot more capacity in the grid. So I imagine that's a slightly bit of a not quite the answer you're looking for, but it's the best I can do at the moment, unfortunately. So yeah, capacity is a tricky thing, and it depends on what you're trying to connect.
It's a great insight, though, to be honest, for those of us who aren't very au fait with it. So Kevin asks, does the ground-mounted solar PV suitability data take into account agrivoltaic projects? He may need to explain what he means by
Yeah,
that.
I don't know what an agrivoltaic project is.
Kevin, do you want to hop on and just explain?
Hi, Joe. Yeah, so agrivoltaics is agriculture underneath the solar panels. So they're mounted very, very high on large on a large structure, so that the land can still be used for agriculture. I'm just wondering if that actually takes that into its if that data would take that into account for suitability.
Quite possibly. I mean, it wouldn't take it into account specifically, but I don't think it would discount. No, tell a lie. It probably would. So let's have a look. Yeah, here we go. So it looks at things like, yeah, roads, residential areas, World Heritage Sites, agricultural land, and flood zones. I know there's some more things in there as well, but I think these are just the ones they've written down. So I would imagine you're right, actually, in that this would probably discount agricultural land as not being suitable for ground-mounted PV. But what you can, so yeah, this would discount farmland. So this would say that farmland would be probably either a maybe or a no. So that might be something to bear in mind if you know that, I think, yeah, for example, that you have an agreement with a farmer or the farmer's happy to do it and they're happy to explore agrivoltaic projects. I'd take their word over the data set. It's more meant to be that kind of top level indication. It doesn't give this it doesn't give local specificities. It doesn't take those into account.
So would it allow us to plan a project even if it says you're not able to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is just a kind of one data set that is just meant to give you an indication of where might be a good idea, where might be a good place to start planning it. But there's no, I mean, there are some things you can't place a heat pump in the middle of a field. I don't think you can play. Yeah, I think there are some technologies that have to be placed on a house, but Yeah, if I can show you right now, for example, let me load in this data set. So I load in the where was that? Solar.
I think the only thing to note with projects like this is you can certainly visualize the data, but at the moment you can't actually plan a kind of a ground mount solar farm via projects. You can't like place it and say it's going to go here yet. That is something that is coming. At the moment, it's very much about building level and street level deployments. So it is like, I want to put an EV charger outside of this house, or I want to put a PV panel on top of this building. At the moment, you can't plan like a solar farm, but this is being expanded, I think, over the next quarter to include a much larger range of technologies that you can place. So you could do projects like that in here.
Okay.
Perfect, thanks, Matt. But yeah, so like I said, the only constraints is at the moment these technologies had to be placed on a building, but they won't say, you know, you've placed PV in a IRENES non-suitable zone. You can't do that. It's absolutely, it'll let you place technologies wherever you want. It's just meant to be an indication of, you know, okay, there's a river here, so maybe I won't want to put my PV right next to a river. This is the city, you know, town centre. Don't want to put it there. And you can do, just get the fields. The dataset does have the individual breakdown, so whether or not it was suitable based on these characteristics. So is it near to ancient woodland, lakes and reservoirs, so on, so on, so on. And I think one of those would be, yeah, is it grade 1 or grade 2 agricultural land? So if you were doing your own kind of custom analysis, you could filter out grade 1 and grade 2, or rather filter back in grade 1 and grade 2 agricultural land if you think that you're wanting to explore agrivoltaic projects.
Thank you.
And so the next two might sort of be related. Churchill asks, does the residential solar potential take account of shading, and what are the methodologies used? Is that in the information tool?
I would expect so. Let's find out together. So it takes into account property type, roof size, roof surface, information, roof orientation, roof inclination. So it doesn't look like shading. And would this be like the shading of other buildings and trees and things like that?
Yeah, probably,
Yeah.
or chimneys and stuff like that. So it's not
Yeah.
super detailed then.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it has any shading in here.
Okay. And does the tool show domestic battery connections?
It doesn't let you model those just yet, but it does have an extract of our LAEP technology connections here. So if I look at the primary level, secondary level stuff here rather. Oh. And then we'll do some filtering. Here we go, battery storage connections. So I can see that at the secondary level, it won't show you individual houses that have battery storage. That's breach of GDPR, but it can say that here there are 6 domestic battery storage connections around this area, around this secondary substation. There are 8 in that area. So it can show you where current domestic battery storage is.
Oh, that's really handy.
Yeah, and you can do. I think this low-carbon technology register includes heat pumps, rooftop PV, battery storage, and EV charge points.
Great. Okay, so I think that's all of the questions in the Q&A. There were a couple from Mike in the chat, but I wonder whether we ought to move on. Any of the questions we don't get round to answering, we'll get answers for you, and we will put those in the email summary. Because I think we ought to go through the case studies that Matt has prepared. Is that all right if we just move on? Okay, over to you, Matt.
Yep. Hi, everyone. So I think what we're going to do is, I appreciate that I think a lot of people, when they sign up for the session, they specified there was a location they might be interested in looking at. So what we'll do is just pick a few of those out and what we'd like to ask is for anyone who's put them forward, just give us a bit of background on what you're trying to do, and then we'll try and show you how the tool can help you with your particular use case. And then we might, if we've got time, we might do another one based on suggestions in the chat. But I was going to start with, let me just share my screen. I think, is John Philpott on the call?
Hello.
I'll take it as a yes. So I think what your suggestion was, commodity warehouse in Malden. It would be good to get a bit of background on what kind of project you're looking at and how we could kind of show you how you might use the tool to help with your project or kind of your goal or objective.
Okay. I mean, initially looking at its potential for solar PV on the rooftop of the building.
Okay. So let me just share my screen. Can everyone see that? Does it come up? Yep, cool. So if you wanted to look at a particular building or area, there's a few different data sets you might want to use. Look at that. So as Joe showed, if you go to the map and data, and I think when you shared this, I'm not sure if it had a postcode. I think there might have been a postcode that was with this one. Sorry, one moment.
CM94NW is the commodity center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing you can do with the tool is very quickly jump to a location by putting it in at the top. You can go in and say, sorry, Joe, can you repeat it? CM9.
Charlie Mike 9 for November whiskey.
And that will highlight on the particular area, which I'm assuming is here. And then there's a few data sets you can use to get a better understanding of that building, but also surrounding buildings. So as I think we've already mentioned, you can have a look at address-based premium, which is an ordnance survey data set. This will tell you things about the building. It will also, if it's been updated by the local authority, tell you things about like the current occupant. So if I click on this one, it will tell me that it's a commercial building, it's classed as light industrial, any organisation information, and things like latitude and longitude. But then you can start looking at the renewable potential data sets that you can overlay on top of that. So we've got, as we showed earlier, things like rooftop PV potential, which is, I think, what you said you're interested in. So I can load that up. Sometimes when you load multiple layers, what you might do is change the order because it will layer them on top. So you can just switch the layers tab and say, well, I want rooftop PV potential on top. And then if I open up the legend, it will show me, in this case, rooftop PV potential is false in grey or true in yellow. I can always click on the building and it's basically saying for this building, suitability is true. And those are based on those modelling assumptions, which we showed just a minute ago. So it will take into account things like the building orientation, roof pitch, whether it's a flat roof, that kind of thing, to make that determination. We have this information available not just for rooftop PV, but also if you wanted to look at, oops, sorry, that's me clicking too quickly. So things like, sorry, let me switch that back on. So things like rooftop PV potential, but also we've got air source and ground source heat pump information, not just for domestic properties, but also for non-domestic. So if you want to look at commercial or industrial buildings, you'd be able to load this as well. And then it will give you some information.
Where does the tool get its information for who owns the building? Because I know that it brought up Alan Collins, but that's in a different place.
Yeah, so that comes from the Ordnance Survey.
Okay.
I do believe that particular field is dependent on reporting information from the local authority. So it's something that I think they only show if that information is available. So in some cases it will be blank, but it will give you an indication of the last information there was about who occupied that building.
I have a quick question. What would the impact on local residents be if you did put the solar on that building then? What's the situation with its substations?
So just in seeing if there was headroom, you mean?
Yeah.
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 So this is where you might want to overlay. So if I just turn the rooftop PV one back on, again, I think this is in the wrong order. Jeez, sorry, let's drag that up. I'm just going to switch the ordnance over one off for the moment, just make this a bit more visible. So obviously it'll show everything in yellow that's likely suitable, but then you can overlay, as we showed before, secondary substation supply areas, and that will give an indication of the headroom that's available in the substations in the area. But then what you might want to do if you want to take this further is actually create a project, as we showed a little bit before. So you might want to go into projects. It'll stay focused on this area and say, well, if I know I'm about to attach certain assets to the project, you can drag this slide and it will start to show you where that might become an issue. The tool will never stop you from creating projects because there may be good reason why you're putting it there. It's really just to indicate that further down the line, if this is something you decided this is definitely I want to carry on with this, you need to talk to the connections team to understand what the implications might be, where they can, accommodate that or look at ways you could adjust the project to meet to connect to the network. Does that help answer some of the questions around that one? Is there anything else, John, that you would like to know about this particular area of the building?
So just can you show us again what it reckoned the potential was?
Yep. So if I just switch this one back on. So it looks like, I'm assuming is this building in the larger one in yellow. So yellow is saying it's true. It'll also tell you things like what it thinks the maximum possible array size is and the potential annual generation. It is worth it's actually worth noting if you are looking at a particular area. So maybe if you were looking at an area and you weren't sure which buildings you wanted to target, you can change the information that's displayed on the map. So at the moment, this is just showing whether a building is suitable or not. But maybe what you want to do is say, well, actually, I'm interested in the buildings where it's got the highest generation potential. And what you can do is go into layers, open up rooftop PV potential, and then change the way that it's visualized. So if I click on these three dots next to the fill color, at the moment it's basing the fill color on whether it's suitable or not. Maybe what I'd rather have is actually show me the potential annual generation. Then you can change and say, well, actually, I want this on a scale of like 1 to 10. Choose a scale, and it will actually color code all the buildings according to the potential generation, and then it will update the legend as well. So it will show you what the potential annual generation for those buildings is. So it's quite useful just for kind of looking at where there might be the best opportunity for what you're planning if you're looking at a wider area rather than just a particular building.
Yeah.
Great, that's all. There weren't any questions, I think, yet on that one, so feel free to move on.
Cool. I think we'll, just in the interest of time, look at one more. I think we were going to look at one, I think Chadleworth Village Hall, but I've since realised that I think our joint geography might not be great because it's actually in Berkshire, which is outside of the UK Power Networks area. So I might not be able to kind of show that on the map. But I just wondered for that particular one, what kind of things you're looking at, and maybe we can kind of show you an alternative view of what you were trying to achieve. And I think this came from David Jennings, this particular suggestion. David is on the call. I can't see him, so let's look at. I've got a third one. So I think the other one that was suggested was a parcel of land in Chevington in Ipswich, and this came from James Roll. I don't know if you could tell us a bit more about what you're trying to do, what kind of projects you're looking at in your area. James is on the call.
Yeah, I am here, sorry.
Hi, James.
Well, we've been approached by someone looking to install sort of a ground solar PV array. Really, it's very early days. We only sort of contacted someone in the last couple of months. So yeah, I was just curious to know what that would look like. Really, as I say, we haven't even done a feasibility yet for it, so it is very early days. But just curious to see what this could show us.
Sure, I think we've partially answered this one a little bit earlier, but I will kind of go through it. So I think it's West Suffolk. Is that correct?
Chevington, yes, it is.
Yeah. So I can switch to the West Suffolk dashboard. So this will now focus all of the map information on this particular area. And if I go into data, I think we might have a postcode for this one as well. It was given. I mean, you can just scout around the map as you want to. There is information if you want to segment the land by things like MSOA boundaries and ward boundaries, but just for this one, I'll put in the postcode. There we go. So this land here. And then we can have a look at, close that down. So I think the one you'd be interested in here predominantly is sorry, was it wind or solar? I think you said it was solar.
It was solar, yeah.
Yeah. So you can use our solar land potential data set, and this will give you an indication of whether these parcels of land are suitable or not. As I showed before, you can look at the methodology for any of these model data sets where it's basically saying we think this area is suitable. There is always a backup document that tells you how we came to that conclusion and the source data that was used. And there'll be one for this that you can find a link to in the metadata, usually in the description. But this is basically showing maybe, which means I think in this case that there are certain properties of this land that might need kind of an in-person survey, but it will give you an indication there's the potential there for you to look at kind of a solar farm project. The other thing to note is, I think, although there are land data sets, so you can look at things like flood risk zones, they are taken into account for this particular data set. You can upload your own. So for example, I know that DEFRA has data sets on agricultural land grade, that you can very easily download from their website and then upload into this using the upload functionality. I think, and they're already in a compatible format. I think they're in shapefile format that you can upload and use those as well. So if you kind of wanted to look at larger area and assess suitability versus what is high grade agricultural land, that's something else that you can do in the tool just by uploading data you sourced from elsewhere. I hope that helps kind of give you some idea of the kind of data you could use to help do initial assessment. And as before, you can look at the utility network information to understand more about whether there is, network capacity and the network topology information as well.
Yeah. Okay, nice one. Thank you.
I think we wanted to leave a bit more time for questions. So
yeah, sorry, I've got roadworks going on and it makes my internet drop intermittently, which is obviously perfect timing. We've got a couple of questions in the Q&A then. Shall we go through those?
Sure.
So I think Mike's question about the microgrid, basically this is a question about seeing whether neighbours can sell solar PV electricity to each other and that kind of thing. Am I right in thinking that's not yet possible to have a microgrid with peer-to-peer selling, or is that not a question for you guys? Is that?
I think that's a question for the connections guys. I know that there has been more and more questions about microgrids. I don't think there's anything that stops us from letting them happen. But yeah, no, I'm not familiar enough with them to give you a useful answer, sorry.
Mike, I think we'll pick that one up and we'll come back to you because it's a big discussion going on and it has also to do with the energy local and local energy bill and all of that stuff. It's regulatory as well as connections, I think, isn't it? So we'll maybe come back on that one. Stefan asked, might it be possible to have an open source version of the tool that only uses the open data sets? And then there's a load of technical stuff that I don't understand. So
Yeah, so this one, I mean, I think the thing to know is that we have a commercial partner, Advanced Infrastructure, who provide the underlying technology for the tool. It would be their decision whether they want to open source that. I don't think that's something they're kind of considering at the moment. What I would say is, though, we've tried to make sure that all data in the tool, where possible, is open for use outside of the tool, because we know that there may be analysis you want to do that is not within the tool that's provided. And much of that will link to the original geospatial files. So you can still use like an open source tool, something like QGIS as a desktop tool to visualize that information. You just won't necessarily be able to do it in the tool itself.
And oh, sorry. Yeah.
So, go on.
And Churchill says, can we export these data as a GeoJSON file or shape files? Is that basically what you're saying? It can be used in a GIS software outside tool?
Some of them can. So in most cases, I think we'll link to the source data. So you can, especially from the LEAP open data page that we have, and the general UKPN open data page, especially around like network information, you can download it in compatible geospatial format, so like a shape file or a GeoJSON or a geo package. It's not available for absolutely everything because some of these are licensed data sets. So you can download some of the information and I think the vast majority you can get as a CSV file or a JSON file, but it won't necessarily be like a GeoJSON or geo package. You might need to do your own conversion to use that. As I say, in most cases, you can get the raw data. You might just need to go an extra step if you want to turn it to a geospatial format. Otherwise, you can get it from the original source, someone like DesNes or DEFRA, who often provide this in the right format anyway.
Great, thank you. And then there was a great question about, and in fact, there's two related questions about the planning. So what's the relationship between the local area energy plan, the MPPF, and plan making by an LPA? And does this tool help? So this really does speak to the question about spatial and energy planning. And I guess my question about, can it show if there is going to be a housing development which might then impact it? What stage does a housing development go onto the tool, and what's the relationship there?
You might need to help me out with some of those initializations. What's an NPPF, sorry?
Oh, okay. So that's the National Planning Policy Framework.
Okay.
So that's the top level in the planning hierarchy. And then plan making by a planning authority, that might be a local plan or it might be a neighbourhood plan.
Sure. Okay. So in terms of the second part of that question, when would a new housing development appear on here? It would appear on here when it's been built. It gets factored into our decision, into our network investment planning a lot earlier than that. At the very least, we make, in terms of like top level assumptions, we include housing growth as a kind of key driver of demand in the forecasts we produce, which underpin our network investment. But we also have long-term visibility through our connections team of large-scale housing developments as well. And then finally, we've also recently kicked off a new work stream, but whereby we'll be working with local authorities and local planning officers to try and get local plan information into our forecast at a much earlier stage. So they won't appear as kind of things on the map here until they've actually been built, I imagine, because that's when it would get factored into the Ordnance Survey data. But if you look at that folder there, forecasted headroom for primaries, it would be factored into that data set at a much earlier stage. So this is just to help you guys. This is the forecast amount of headroom that we'll have at a primary level. I think it goes out all the way to 2050. So we take those forecasts of how many technologies we expect to connect to in our area, and we run analysis on that to determine what the electrical demand requirement would be.
Great, thank you. So Martin says, does the tool provide an indication of the actual electricity use in a building or area then?
I think it does, yeah. We've definitely got regional electricity usage data, and I think we've also got I think we've also got building level energy demand. Certainly, I know we've got at least the heating demand. I'm not sure if it's got an assumption around electrical demand. Matt, you might be able to.
Yeah, so you can show you domestic electricity and gas consumption down to postcode level. It doesn't go down to building level, but we give you an indication, and there are data sets here for both of those things. I think we've got some non-domestic information, but it doesn't go down to postcode level. It's a kind of an MSOA level rather than anything more granular than that. But that will give you an indication of like number of meters, consumption, and so on. You can visualize.
Okay. Wow. And Melania has sort of two related questions. One is, can we use the tool to assess if there's available capacity for incoming supply to a new build site? And can it also identify the ideal nearby point of connection and available headroom capacity, which we sort of went through earlier, but
Yeah, so I don't think it helps with point of connection. It will if you're looking to assess sites for a new housing development, looking at the primary substation headroom, looking at the locations of existing secondary substations. Just trying to think what else maybe, but yeah, that would definitely be a good place to start. You could potentially look at some of the cable data as well to see where there is actually a network, because one of the significant things that adds to the cost of a new connection is just the actual putting of the cable in the ground to connect your thing, whatever it is, to our network. So, because that's might help actually if I just do a very, very quick one. I will have to drop quite shortly, unfortunately, but just a quick one in terms of how the connection quote is developed is whenever, how do I put this? So whenever you do a connection to the network, there are kind of two elements of it. There is one which is called the kind of like sole use asset, and that is the bit of the network which is yours. It kind of belongs to you almost, because it's a cable that goes from your solar farm or from your house to our network, and no one else gets any use of that. So it's your bit of cable, and that means you would pay 100% of that. So if our network is here and you want to build a house miles away over here, we'll connect it, but that cable is just yours, and it's gonna you'd have to pay for it, and it's probably quite expensive if it's, let's say, a mile of underground high voltage cable. But as of April 2023, you would not pay for the cost of upgrading the network. So if we have to reinforce the secondary substation in the area to connect your heat pump or your EV charging hub or something like that, you don't pay for that. And the idea is that because we've upgraded the network, that benefits everyone. Excuse me. That benefits everyone in the area, so that cost gets socialized. So in terms of network connection costs, you only pay for the bit that you only benefit from. If we have to upgrade the network and put in more capacity, we pay for that because it gets socialized.
Okay, so on the solar farm example, then could you look at the network cabling and the local substation and think that could work as a connection? Like you can see the 11 kV line going through or something like that, going through a field or whatever. Could you use it for that?
Yeah, you could use it for that. I mean, you'd probably have a better idea of the land use than we would if it's the local area, but just try and visualize, we'd need to put a cable somewhere to connect your asset to our network. Where's that cable going to go? If it's going through a river, that's going to be complicated and expensive. If it's 5 meters under a bit of field that no one uses, that should be pretty easy.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions. Let me just check the chat. People were not helping me here with the chat and the Q&A, but hopefully we've answered most of them. So we had a lot more case studies sent through to us. So the next steps for community energy groups, or for anybody on the call, town councils, whoever, find out who your local authority would be that would have ownership of this instance of the tool. And then you need to ask them permission to join. We do have a template which we'll send out to everybody who signed up for this event, which UKPN have very kindly put together for us, which is a template email to send to the local authority to explain what you want, and hopefully they will be able to give you permission to access that instance. But you know, as Joe was saying, the website has loads of information, and anybody can go and ask the questions, and hopefully they will be able to help. Joe, thank you so much for your time and your prep. Always.
Thanks a lot, everyone. And yeah, feel free
Always
to get in touch through the website, and if you've got any follow-up questions. But love to meet you all. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks.
Cheers,
so does
bye.
anybody have any other questions? We've got another 15 minutes left on the call. So please do feel free to ask Matt if you've got any other questions or any feedback, in fact, of how you think you could use it. If you want to raise your hand and just jump in and say you can see yourself using this tool to do whatever, because it's always helpful to see how other people think they're going to use it.
I think there is one question from Mike, which we might not have answered.
Okay, go for it.
Which is, if new development is mandated to have solar and PV batteries, how is this factored into demand requirements? So what you can do is, when you create a project, this won't, I think, entirely fulfill that need. But if you create a project, which is when you're looking at kind of those street level deployments, let me just show you very quickly. Is if I create a project in here, and say if I was looking at a new housing development, what I can do, and it's probably not the best area to do it in, but anyway, I can use domestic, which basically means you're placing in a new domestic building, so a house. This will assume a basic 23 kilowatt demand, but you can also add assets to it. So you can say, well, actually, I'm placing a house, but I know for a fact it's going to have PV panels, and you can decide the size of those panels and then place that on the map. It doesn't do batteries yet, but that is, as I say, this is being expanded, so you can place a wider range of low carbon technologies onto the map and plan those projects in that way in the next few months. So that is hopefully something we'll be able to add in the future.
That's super useful. So will that be available to planning agents putting together planning applications, so they can actually put the realistic demand into their planning applications?
Yes. So, I mean, I think the thing to stress about this tool is very much a planning tool that helps you explore an area and look at where those opportunities are, and then get a picture of how they might look. It doesn't replace the need to go through the connections team. It won't automatically send that to the connections team, but it'll certainly hopefully give you a better picture of what a project might look like, which is really helpful for the connections team, so they understand what you're trying to do and kind of help you through that. Yeah,
brilliant. Anybody got any feedback? Anybody want to jump in and say, I'm going to use this to do X, Y, or Z? No? So everybody's going to use it exactly as we've demonstrated. Brilliant. Don't worry. I totally understand your shyness. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there then. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you to Emma for helping organise this so beautifully. We will send out an email with the recording. Lots of people signed up but didn't make it. So we'll have the recording, we'll have the template for asking your local authority if you can connect onto it. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with Community Energy Pathways on this. And obviously you can contact UKPN as well directly if you've got questions about how to use the tool or anything like that. So just remains for me to say thanks again